This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Welcome to a very regular day of street photography in London. I want to show you the fun bits, the boring bits, the good photos, the crap photos, and everything in between. I'll commentate as the day progresses, and I'll share my thought process behind each photograph and why I did or didn't like each image. From a day of photography like this one, I would probably take 400 to 500 raw images, and I would typically keep maybe 10 of them. But for the sake of this video, I want to try keep things as real and as raw as possible. So with that being said, you're about to see a lot of really bang average photographs. I hope this video is valuable and you can see just how realistic street photography is. First things first, I met up with fellow photographer and good pal JP for a coffee before our full day of shooting. A quick recommendation for my fellow London photographers, or even if you're visiting London, here is a list of my favourite coffee shops. Enjoy. Now it's time to take some pictures, and we're kicking things off with some sheep on a bridge, obviously. Clearly this is quite a unique little event taking place, and I'll share some info in the description of what this is exactly, but my thinking going into these pictures is very straightforward. I'm just warming up, capturing the general story and not really overthinking anything. When you're just getting started for the day of street photography, you just want to get the ball rolling. Don't worry about it too much. This image was fun to take. I like the depth and the layering of the subjects. Each element kind of has its own space. I think technically it works, but it does lack substance. Nothing overly interesting is happening. Even though it did tick a few boxes initially, it's a pretty boring photograph in the end. Notice how I took this photograph from the hip slightly unexpectedly. She politely stopped when she saw me taking a picture, which of course I don't mind, so I gestured for her to keep walking, and I took the photo as the woman walked through. And this image is way better than if I just got a single portrait of the gentleman like I originally planned. I really like the depth and spacing between the two subjects, and the smiling woman is a nice contrast between the gentleman looking kinda curious. I'm not really sure what to say about the following few photographs. I think they're pretty average at best. Nothing really stands out to me, but it was definitely fun to take these photographs. Even though none of them are brilliant, it doesn't really matter. I had fun shooting this little sheep event anyway. From all my sheep pictures just now, this one might be the best of a bad bunch. The way the guy is gesturing his walking stick stands out and tells a little story. It was time to take a break from the sheep stuff. We then headed to the Tate Modern as it was nearby and checked out the Joel Merowitz exhibition. I've seen it a few times now and it doesn't get less impressive each time. His work is very special. I think it finishes sometime in November, so I highly recommend checking it out if you can. I would just like to take a moment to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Many of you will know I've been using Squarespace for a very long time to host all of my photography, sell products, write blogs, and even a weekly newsletter. And I am continually impressed with the updates and features that Squarespace brings to the table. Whether you're choosing one of the many beautiful templates or using AI to give you a helping hand, Squarespace can do all of the heavy lifting so you can have a website up in literally minutes. Squarespace really has been my all-in-one place for running my online business, and I cannot recommend them enough. So why not at least start a free trial and see what you think? After that, when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Mike Chudley to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. All right, back to it. I'm getting slightly more experimental with this next one. I just noticed the light was interesting and the texture on the glass caught my eye. This isn't anything super impressive, but I guess I'm just practicing and hoping for the best. And it turns out it didn't really work. I think it's worth mentioning that street photography really is just a lot of walking around aimlessly, not taking any pictures. You've just got to be ready for those spontaneous moments, and the reality is 99% of the time you're not actually taking photographs, you're just looking for them. We headed back to the bridge with the sheep for one more scout around before we explore the rest of the city. Next, we headed over to Guildhall for another unique event. This time it's the Pearly Kings and Queens. Honestly, I don't know exactly what this is about, but here's a brief description on screen. Everything that was happening here was mostly confined behind a fence and didn't make for anything super interesting, but someone involved in a very fancy outfit took a moment to have a cigarette away from the crowd, so I thought it would be worth asking for a portrait. I don't typically ask people for portraits, but when it's so obvious and intentional like this, I think it makes sense to just strike up a quick conversation from time to time. I don't mind these photographs, I think they're okay. What's pretty cool about the street photography scene in London is the community aspect nowadays. You generally don't need to organise meeting up with other photographers, as it's likely you're going to bump into each other. That likelihood is dramatically increased when there's a street event like this, obviously. I've made so many friends from street photography over the last couple of years, and I'm very grateful to have access to a place like London. Not only for the photography itself, but bumping into other like-minded photography geeks as well.
Just give me 17 seconds to turn my camera on. Cool, there we go.
Incredible customer service. Yeah. So like, for 170
Where's your eyepiece,
quid,
mate?
they will fix whatever is wrong with your camera. 70.
It's alright, in the background of that audio there's just JP raving about Fujifilm. It's like his eyepiece is missing and you're like, Fujifilm, best value for money.
Amazing. Customer service, the best.
This bus stop photo isn't special by any means, but I do think this type of thing is fun to try. I would normally just delete this photo, but for the sake of this video, I'll explain my thinking. It's about looking for miscellaneous objects and shapes that could align with your subjects in a unique way. For example, I've blocked this person's head with the bus stop sign. It would have been perfect if the bus stop sign actually had a face on it or something to represent the subject's head. Just the circle sign doesn't really mean anything. But I initially noticed the sign lining up with the subject waiting for the bus, and I thought I'd take the photograph anyway. And I think that was probably too much explanation for such a boring photograph. Something about the lack of colour in this scene caught my attention. Also, the person's hair keeping the subject anonymous was another element that added to it. Again, nothing exceptional, but worth a press of the shutter button anyway. This one has a pretty interesting contrast and super minimal backdrop, which is not something you usually see in the streets. The person on the phone is nothing noteworthy, but it is what it is. What caught my attention here was the two well-dressed gentlemen stood together in the matching outfits, as the two women walking past were also wearing very similar outfits, or at least wearing all black. I also like how the two on the right are facing away and the two on the left are facing forward. I was essentially attempting to capture two different pairs in the same scene. This would be much more interesting if the women were identical twins, or just generally more matching, like the two on the right are. So this next photo is definitely my favourite of the day, and it's something that I probably will never be able to replicate. And it's also maybe 50% pure luck and 50% just being in the right place at the right time. Anyway, I'll let it play out and I'll share some thoughts afterwards. I guess this goes back to my point I made earlier when I was trying to get the shot of the bus stop sign covering the subject's head. This is the same effect or style by using the environment to interact and make the subject more interesting. But this time, compared to the bus stop sign, this is infinitely more effective and visually interesting. If I didn't show you the footage or provide context to what is happening in this scene, it might take you a moment or two to figure out exactly what's going on. And a photo that leaves you with more questions than answers is likely to be more interesting. So overall, really happy with this one. This image isn't amazing, but I do enjoy finding completely irrelevant elements in a frame and trying to create a relationship between them. So my intention with this one was to show how the wheels on the taxi are very similar to the colour and shape of the subject's hat. I find it fun to at least try and connect completely separate elements and bring them together. Oddly enough, about 2 weeks before this photograph, I shot a very similar version, and I think my previous version is a little bit better than the one you see today. But I'll let you decide which one you prefer. Well, I hope you enjoyed my honest ramblings about street photography. The reality is, street photography is very difficult and you basically just take rubbish photographs 99% of the time until you land on one that you're pretty pleased with. And the puddle reflection raindrop image is definitely my favourite and probably the only photograph worth looking at from this video. And maybe I look back on a few of these photographs in a couple of years' time and my perspective is different. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. Please hit subscribe and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.